We're almost all there, right? Trying to look.
Let me see.
Link is here, Upstream, drips, alt clients, marketing. Is marketing here? Maybe not.
Is Nas joining for community? Oh no,
No, Nassar is not today. They're in Breckenridge.
Oh, that's right.
What is that? What's Breckenridge? People know.
What is Breckenridge? It's an amazing place to go skiing and snowboarding in the United States. Yeah, near Denver.
I guess Andrew. Yeah, I don't know how to unmute. I guess. Do I?
So Julian, if you go down to the on the bottom strip, there's like the two little people. If you click on that, then the sidebar will pop up, and on each person you can then change the settings for everyone there too. But yeah, I guess I don't know if you want to wait a few more minutes or if we want to get started. Then we can pull Fintan up.
I think I can. Oh no, Andrew, you can speak now. I didn't do it. Did I do it? Oh, yeah.
I think you did it. Well, it like
okay.
it seems so. I guess this is just like a good test of how this all works. But like, it like allowed me to unmute. So it's like a two-step process. Like you're letting me unmute, and then I had to click unmute as well. So yeah, I guess for anyone here, or that's how it works. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to say that like Breck is like a ski town near Denver, and Nas and Matt were psyched to go up there. They're going to be up there this week, and it's actually an official part of ETH Denver. I think at this point is that like people go there for like part of the week after or something.
How cool! All right. So yeah, I think we can get started, right?
You're spamming me with would you like to speak?
I'm sorry. On my end, nothing changes if I click it. So I just have been clicking it like 20 times.
Yeah, I got like 10 pop-ups. So should I start?
So, I think this is everyone for today, and if it's not, they'll come in later. I think everybody heard the whole you're muted until you raise your hand and then you're unmuted part. Cool. Well, Abby's not feeling well, so I'll be moderating this call today. Welcome everyone to, I guess this is February's community call. Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of go through all the teams today. I have a little list, so that'll be the order. If you want to add anything or you have a question, just raise your hand, as Shelby said, and I'll make sure everybody has spoken, and then yeah, that's it. Let's start.
One last thing.
Oh, okay.
This call is being recorded.
Oh yeah, right. Watch out what you're saying.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Fintan, since you're unmuted already, I guess you can give a little update for the Link team.
Sure.
You're also the first on my list, so it's perfect.
Excellent.
Go for it.
I am pressing all the buttons to get my... There we go. Cool. So as usual, I posted the update to Radicle community, but let's go through it anyways. So what's been served in the last month? Tracking, some updates and tracking. So hindsight is 2020, and we forgot to add some migration from the V1 version of tracking to the latest and greatest. So that is in place with a couple of bumps along the way. Thanks to Thomas for testing it out and flagging a slight bug. And now it should be fully working and transparent to any users of Radicle Link. It happens upon storage construction. We also spotted a nice algebraic solution for doing batch operations, batch tracking. So details were added to the RFC and that was implemented. More of a fun, nice to have than critical. Regarding replication, the use of the tracking configuration was integrated. There was a discussion spurred on by integrating it, but essentially the tracking or the replication will only kind of look at the data portion. So looking at replicate, whether it should replicate the signed refs or whatever in the signed refs. For now, it'll ignore the collaborative objects filter. We will look into how we want to respect that down the line, but at the moment it won't affect replication. You can click into the link conversation there to get some more details on that if you're interested. And then while exploring the integration of the new replication v3 in Radicle Upstream, Alex came across an issue with the Git Oxide library, or one of the libraries in Git Oxide, I should say. I've inlined the note that he added to the announcement, the release announcement, but the TLDR was that it was messing up with some signal handlers, and there is a workaround. These recent issues with Git Oxide have prompted us to talk about how much we want to rely on that set of packages, and we'll probably only rely on the protocol v2 feature for now. Then on the peer node side of things, we landed an MV peer, which is a standalone socket activated daemon as per the application architecture RFC. Yeah, so this kind of like introduces the way for implementing the rest of the application architecture. So that's really exciting. Let's look out for more changes along those lines. In the RFCs domain, 701 was proposed and accepted. The TLDR there is that there will be a mechanism in the protocol for peers to synchronize. Click into the RFC to read more about that. There was a few improvements on CI, just kind of like organization, but also there was a GitLab CI manifest added if people are into that sort of thing. Then there is some contributions from user JMan on the documents and licensing. This prompted a discussion about the radical linking exception, and ultimately that's dropped now from our licensing. So what's coming up, what's on the hub? We want to continue on this application architecture work. So we'll be fleshing out the Git server, like a Git daemon that will replace the infamous Git rad remote. So we'll be able to use regular Git commands in the future. So just like Git fetch and Git push, and it'll do all the radical link storage magic in the background. We also are talking about some code organization improvements. We've noticed our test suite has been a bit sluggish to compile, and so there's some exploration into how we could reduce that. We've discussed and have a patch open for shifting from rad prefixed binaries to LNK prefixed. This was because we realized that we're stepping on the toes of the Alt Clients team and their suite of CLI commands, and that there'll be some crossover in naming. So we decided to switch the namespace. The analogy that Alex has been using is, it's not that we're Git plumbing and the other applications are Git porcelain, but more like we're Rusty and other applications are Cargo. So completely different namespacing. Something we'd like to have on the source up builds is a NixOS build. This will mean that our dependencies are declarative, so people can just look at the Nix derivation to see what the dependencies are. If anyone's interested and likes Nix, we will accept contributions. Otherwise, I'll eventually have to do it myself. And then Also, if anyone else is interested in contributing, I think some good low-hanging fruit would be to use or switch over from struct opt to clap for argument parsing in the binaries. So I've listed the different binaries that use or have arguments, and so it might be interesting for people to get stuck into some Radicle link code. That's it. Stay radical.
Great. Thank you, Fintan. You're still sharing your screen, by the way. Yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I had a question what the signal handlers are and why they're bad. I didn't really get that part.
It was more that Git Oxide was stepping on the toes of other signal handlers of the Tokyo library. So it's just how I believe it's how like processes intercommunicate using signals.
Cool. All right, Sebastian, can I do this? Ask to unmute.
I just did, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now it seems. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the MVP, the standalone peer node. What eventual use cases you are thinking could be useful? Is it something like the seed node, the all clients team is like about to deploy, or is it something more low level?
Essentially, it would be what applications can build on top of. So like Upstream or alt clients could build on top of it. It would be the kind of historical or the history of this is that we have the daemon crate and in Radicle link that used to live in Upstream actually, but we wrote up the application architecture RFC, and this would be the basis of how we want to build nodes in general so that other applications can interact with it and build interesting things on top of the Radicle protocol.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Yes, okay, good. I just wanted to add a little bit to that on just a bit more detail on it, because you asked specifically whether it would be something that could be used like the seed that our client is building. The intention of it is the way that we've been building it is slightly more, you could implement a seed with it, and ideally the seed would, the old client may benefit from using it at some point. It can run either as a process that you communicate with via an RPC, or in process in a Rust program that you communicate with via channels.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, cool. If there's no further questions, shall we move it on? Yes. All right, so the next update is from the Upstream team, which I'm going to give, so that's going to be easy. First of all, I want to introduce Kai. Kai joined us this week as our new product owner, so he's going to help us with some short and long-term product roadmap and product strategy and anything related to getting communicating with users and everything. Yeah, you'll see. He's gonna slowly work his way in, and you'll see all the things he's gonna do. We're very excited. Something that we kind of started seeing as things evolved, that we wanted somebody to own that as kind of like just one person that took charge in that, because we were all doing little bits of that. So we were very excited to have somebody to take it over for us. From the Upstream side, so Upstream has actually been using Upstream to contribute to Upstream for the last few months, basically since the new year. Thomas and Rudolf has been doing a good job with that. We've done that using kind of this first implementation of patches that we have. I mean, I think Thomas told you about this last community call as well. Based on our kind of experience of using this and also collecting some feedback of also J-Man actually that contributed to our repo, also contributing to our README and everything, doing basically the same thing he did in the link team. He gave us actually really nice kind of feedback on how to improve our patches feature. So we've actually implemented some of these improvements. We've kind of built out the CLI that was before mainly using Git commands, so Git tag commands. We actually wrapped that in an Upstream CLI that now you can do Upstream patch create, Upstream patch update to actually create patches. So we've been using this, and that's actually been going quite well, and the improvements are really nice. Now that we have this out there, we'd like to kind of collect some feedback on that. And Rudolf did a little write-up in the community, and I'll share this here, where we're asking for more feedback around this. So try it out, look at the patches that are there, share it out to other people. You can take a look. You'll find the information there. So this is kind of like the big feature that we're working on, and at the same time, we're looking to integrate with this new Radicle interface push-pull infrastructure that they've been working on. The kind of like peer-to-peer replication setup that they've implemented. So we want to make sure that Upstream is compatible with that, so that there's not two kind of conflicting or confusing experiences, because we already kind of suffered a little bit from that in the past. So we want to make sure that Upstream is basically compatible with the new infrastructure that Radicle interface or the alt clients team is shipping soon. So that's something that we've been looking into. We're starting to get a good idea of what the work is, and once that's done, we're gonna start doing that work. We're planning it now, and I think it's going to come soon. That's kind of the update from the Upstream team. Did I miss anything? No? Cool. I see nods in the no direction. Cool. Is there any questions? Then I'll shift over to the next team, which is the Workstream team, which is also me. Workstreams. You might have seen it float around on Discord. It's kind of like this. Basically, Nassar did some research, and he figured out that it'd be cool to, like, the DAOs actually were looking to pay for grants and pay their contributions in a kind of native Web3 way. And he kind of did a whole little, he built a little prototype, or he designed a little prototype around that, which kind of sparked some thinking between Alexis and myself around this. And we kind of defined a little MVP around this and started working on this. And out of that, we kind of created a little team that I've been focusing on half or even more than half my time the last few months. I'm joining that team with Odysseus, who's in the call here as well. He's helping us with some contract work, or he was. And also with Krug. Krug is an outside contributor who's been helping with some things in the Drips team as well. He's working on a library with Sebastian, and he's also been contributing in the front end in the Workstream team. So we're basically working on a little MVP right now, and we're kind of all the pieces are in between the three of us, and we're hoping to put those three things together in the next 2 weeks, maybe next month, and have a little prototype that we can start using or start testing. And this basically Workstreams is entirely built on top of the Drips protocol. We're initially just going to use that as our contract protocol before we really kind of want to expand on that, which we might do later on. But in the beginning, we want to just basically build purely on Drips. Cool. Yeah. All right. Is there any questions there? I'd love to hand it over to someone else to talk at this point. Cool. Great. Let's do it.
This was the channel that had a series of name changes within the last few weeks. correct?
Was it the Workstreams? No,
I
it's
don't
always
know.
been Workstreams. Wasn't that the growth team that changed
Oh
names
yeah,
like
no,
for
it's the
thing?
growth team. The very impressive series of name changes.
And they're back at growth team. So I guess they come full circle. Cool. Then I'm gonna hand it over to, I think, Cloudhead to talk about the alt clients team, or is it Sebastian? I don't know who's gonna speak.
Sure.
Cool. Here we go.
Yeah. So actually, we've been working hard at a big release, which is supposed to be today, if I can manage the tweet storm, which is kind of the real blocker here. Glorious growth. So we've been working basically on a bunch of different things. I'm gonna show a few things on the CLI and on the web, but I'm not going to dive super deep into anything in particular unless there are questions. Let's see. What is this? Yeah, okay. So just a couple of things on the web UI that are nice improvements that just landed. So we have a much better peer selector now because you can see the peer name. You can see whether it's a delegate. So we've basically caught up to Upstream in terms of the peer selector, the branch selector. Also, this all works. We have commit view, individual commit browsing. So it's pretty full featured at this point. You can browse code pretty comfortably. Another thing on the web interface I thought was kind of cool is that we updated the some of the ENS registration views to actually work with any ENS name, not just Radicle names. So you can use our much nicer UI to update your records instead of going on ens.domains. And especially for Radicle stuff, it makes a lot more sense to do it here because you don't need to type in the whole thing. And then there's also, we've started to, so we have these new seed nodes. There's 3 of them that we're going to be launching with Willow, Pine, and Maple. So these are going to show up now and now on this page, and we just swiped them, so there's nothing on them. But I don't know if I showed last time that we have seed browsing. So you can put any domain in the URL here, and then after seeds, and it'll let you browse the seed node and the code and everything. Some funky styling stuff here. So that's pretty much it for the UI. And then on the CLI, let me just share a different screen. I think this is a good one. Yeah, so the CLI is pretty much ready to be used for collaborating. We tested it out with Sebastian and Jules yesterday, and it was working really well. Basically, I mean, there's a few new commands since last time. You can directly clone a project now. You have push and pull, check out, which is if you've cloned it once, you can check it out again. And then you have track, which is to essentially manage your remotes. So track will, so by default, it'll actually, you can actually use it to list local or remote peers and branches. And so here you'll see, okay, like there's under this project, there's one remote, and it's me. So it says you, I'm a delegate, gives me a name, and then it has a bunch of branches that I've published. And then you can also use the track command to actually add a peer. So you can do rad track and then the peer ID here, and it will create a tracking branch and a remote and everything. So you can start collaborating immediately. A couple of other commands, like one kind of neat thing is to just show the project ID. You just do rad dot. It's actually a shortcut for rad inspect, but I thought it was kind of cool. And there's a rad remote, which doesn't show anything here because I have no remotes, but it lets you add, remove, and list remotes basically. Yeah, I think. Oh yeah, and one other command that was also added, which is very handy, rad self, which tells you everything about yourself. So your current profile, name, your REN, peer ID, which is probably the most useful one, or the one you're going to use the most, and then your Radicle key, which is an SSH key, the short version or the fingerprint, and the long version. And this is actually pretty important because for all of the authentication and to seed nodes, if you want to essentially not open it to the world, you can add your SSH key to a file, and the Git server will only allow the keys in the file to push, basically. And then, of course, it's also your code signing key if you set that up, which I have. GitHub doesn't like it, but I do. And Radicle actually helps you. So if you don't have a global key set up, it'll actually prompt you whether you want to set up in the Radicle repo your key as a signing key. So then it'll actually set it up inside of here. It'll set up the key. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And we're hoping to launch this officially today. We'll see how that goes, but it's pretty much ready. You may speak.
Can I go? I wasn't the first. Anyway, I noticed that in the web UI you showed the ENS registration, and there was still the seed peer ID you could register on chain. Is that still something we do, or is that going to be phased out?
Yeah, it's actually it will be useful, but it currently isn't. So if we look at the records that are important here, so right now really the most important one is a seed host. So if you have because the reason that's important is simply that if I go to Cloudhead Radicle ETH here, it will actually pick that up here and list my projects.
We only see your CLI screen, by the way.
Oh, whoops, sorry. That is a good point. Okay. Yeah, so what I was explaining is the only really important record at the moment is a seed host record, because this is what's going to allow, let's say, if I go to cloudhead.radicle.eth, it will pick that up here and it'll list my projects. And these are the projects that are on my seed node, right? So this record...
I was asking because I saw in the API of the seed node that we're showing the peer ID. So I was...
Yeah, I mean, so seed nodes still have a peer ID even if they don't communicate it to the network because of peer-to-peer gossip not being enabled. Mm-hmm. They do have a peer ID, and this will allow us to transition when we add peer-to-peer. It'll kind of just work, right? So it'll use that peer ID. But yeah, at the moment it's not so useful. The seed node peer ID is not so useful because it doesn't sign anything, right? It really doesn't sign anything. But if you're configuring things, you may as well add it so that you add it in one transaction with all other information, and you don't have to fiddle with it later.
Thanks.
Any other question? I have a question. What's a delegate?
Delegate is what we call maintainer in Radicle right now, in Upstream, sorry.
Well, in alt clients, not in Upstream.
No, in Upstream we call them maintainers.
Yeah, exactly.
And in alt clients we call them delegates. So delegates is the official name, as in the name in Radicle link that they're called.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, the Radicle link. That's where it comes from. So I thought it would make sense to start using the same terminology to be less confusing when you're moving between the CLI and the web, basically.
Something to figure out, because I'm confused by delegate because I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
But I understand that this might make sense to just align it between all the
it just requires an explanation, and I think it's a better term than maintainer, because it's more precise to what it says less, but also more in a way. It's really about the rights, the signing rights over a project, not so much about the role of the person.
Right, that's what Alex was saying as well. It's also, they could not be people, for example.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So that's why I'm being a maintainer. Okay, it's interesting. Something to think about. And I was wondering if you wanted to show the website as well, or not.
I want to keep it under wraps until it's launched.
I see. Okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say anything. Okay.
But yeah,
cool.
Brendan and Jules have been helping me out by designing a great landing page for the app.
More on that later. Cool. So if there's no more questions, I think I'll hand it over to the Drips team. Andrew, is that going to be you?
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me? I think I'm still permission to speak from before. Cool. Let me try to share my screen here. See if this works. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks. Cool. So I have followed the convention of just posting the update in the radicle.community. So can find it there, and we'll just kind of drive from there. So lots of stuff happening in February. This is like kind of our first real month of being live with v0.1, so super exciting. We also kind of in the middle of the month or so, we got Polygon launched, so that was pretty huge for folks who are concerned about transaction fees and gas. We're also continuing to kind of work closely with the Polygon team in this partnership. LA did a really nice live AMA on Twitter with their team, where he I think was pretty well attended, where he went through kind of a bunch of the motivation and features in Drips, and you can find a link to that in the update. So a lot of what we've been doing this month is really just kind of gathering user feedback on the first version of Drips. We've had a lot of great feedback from early users, and also folks who are looking at integrating with Drips with different apps that they're building. So I think, just to kind of summarize that, probably the biggest piece of feedback we received is that there's a lot of teams that are interested in using Drips. They're interested in having communities in Drips, but they don't want to issue NFTs or do anything with memberships. These are projects like the Solidity team or the Graph, where it kind of makes sense. They're well funded. They're not looking to raise funds, but they do want to kind of be a community or have some of the kind of community aspects. So through taking that feedback, we're kind of refactoring basically how we think about identity in general in Drips. We want to make it much more flexible, where when you have one of these Ethereum address-based user identities, you can have that be whatever you want. So it can be kind of a user account where you add like your personal Twitter or your GitHub, or like nothing at all. Even you can be totally anonymous. Or if you want to be a community, you can have one of these regular user accounts, but you can add a bunch of identity information in IPFS, including links to all sorts of social media and other just information about your community, but like not have to actually raise funds or have NFTs. And that's going to be split out into like a separate feature, which we're thinking about as either like a fundraising campaign or a membership. Like we're maybe leaning a little bit towards membership, but still kind of looking for feedback on that. But then the idea is that like, every user in Drips is basically has kind of a base identity as it's just an Ethereum address that they can associate whatever information they want with, and then launch fundraising as an additional thing separately if they wish. So that's kind of that. a bunch of people from Radicle were at ETH Denver. I think I was the main person from the Drips team, but we did have a lot of help with Drips from the community and growth teams. Nas and Matt and Abby in particular did a really great job of kind of getting the word out and also setting up meetings with other teams. So I think that our main focus was kind of meeting with DAO tooling teams. So we met with some of the kind of like early leaders in this space. Anyone who is at ETH Denver knows that like DAOs were one of the big themes this year. So I think that Workstreams this is very validating of the whole Workstreams idea. I think a lot of folks are looking for this now. And it seemed like everyone I met was either starting a DAO or very involved in a DAO or transitioning their project governance to a DAO. So I think that Workstreams is really well positioned, and we met with a few other teams like Utopia, Wonderverse, and Station, and we're working with them on getting Drips integrated into their products. So that was pretty fun. Multi-token has been a big thing under development this month. Igor and Manuel have been really heads down, crushing on that. It's a big, complicated feature. But so far it seems like it's going really well, and we've got some great kind of documents around it, and even kind of an early version that Igor has built that we're playing around with. So stay tuned for more updates there. That's pretty much the past month, and then next up, finished delivering multi-token. That's kind of the main, I think, focus of development for the Drips team right now. That and this, as I mentioned, this kind of refactoring of community and identity, which really is more kind of requirements for the front end app that Everett has been figuring out how to kind of refactor the front end or just the user experience to really kind of capture these new kind of identity concepts and this more general sense of what a community can be in Drips. So we're hoping to land that pretty soon. We'll probably be spending a lot more time focused on partnerships and integrations. This is really, I think, the way that we see Drips growing and gaining the most momentum, particularly as Drips being kind of a low-level protocol. I think the best way to gain adoption is to partner with other projects that can build on us and get users into Drips. So we're going to continue talking with all these different DAO tooling teams and probably others as well. So also more networks. We're live on Ethereum mainnet and Polygon, as well as a couple of test nets today. But I think at the moment, our thinking is that there's really no reason not to continue to scale out across other blockchains and layer 2s that support the EVM. It's proven to be relatively straightforward so far. So probably more network rollouts coming in the next month or two. And then the last thing is really exciting. Krug, who's been contributing to the Drips team more and more over the last month or so, is working on an SDK. So a JavaScript SDK, which will really, this is something that as we were talking to folks at ETH Denver, this really resonated. This will really kind of, we think, open the door to allow others to easily build on Drips and kind of incorporate it into their own front-end experiences so that, particularly for these DAO tooling projects, they want to have their own kind of front-end just as the Workstream team does. And so the SDK will probably, we believe that'll be the best way to do that so that folks can easily just build on Drips without having to really do too much, direct access code of their own. So very excited about that and excited that Krug has jumped in and is helping out more and more. So thank you, Krug. So I think that's it. Let me just stop sharing my screen. Any questions from anyone out there?
Oh, one question. Was there, I think initially there were plans to stream some money from the DAO or something into Drips to kind of fund the projects we depend on. Are we still going to do that, or was it shelved?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't heard too much talk about that recently, but I do know that I think what is going on, I don't know if Bordumb is on the call, but he is excited about using Drips more and more for basically the Radicle, managing the Radicle grants process in general. And I think flowing more of the Radicle grants funding through that. So that's kind of similar to what you're asking. But yeah, as far as
cool.
Yeah, as far as dependencies, we do have the Drips team set up as a team in or as a community in Drips, and we've got splits defined. So if folks are interested in flowing funds to some of the dependencies for the Drips team, that would be one way to do that. But yeah, I think probably the main dog food focus is going to be through Radicle grants. Cool.
And have you seen uptake with Polygon? Because a lot of people were like waiting for that.
Not too much yet, but yeah, I think we'll have to wait
just
and
like
see.
Complain.
Yeah, exactly. I think people have complained, but then not actually used it too much yet. So we'll have to see.
Okay.
Alexis, was your question around whether the foundation would actually funnel some like money into the drip system?
Foundation or the DAO, yeah.
Or the DAO, yeah, exactly.
Because we got a bunch of projects that we depend on to sign up, right? Like Ethers and ENS and Solidity. So yeah, I was wondering if there were.
I mean, it would be a nice thing because I feel like everybody kind of set up the trickle down thing, but nobody's pouring in the top.
Exactly.
It could be nice to like.
Someone's got to pour the water.
Exactly, like it's the glasses of champagne, right? You got to put in the top first before everybody gets.
Yeah, I think it could be a good time for it. I think we've been a bit, especially with ETH Denver and all the different conversations, we've been a bit distracted. But I think it's a really cool idea, and we do have we have like the Solidity team in there. We have a few other teams in there, so I think it's ready for someone to pour.
Cool.
Pour some.
Could also just be a grant proposal and a grant that actually, we can then vote on it, and some of the grant money just falls in there again or something. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about. It'd be nice for everybody that's in there or got somebody to kind of like assign a split to them to all of a sudden have some money coming through there, right? It would be kind of a really nice kind of proof of concept in a way.
And if we do it, I mean, let's maybe we can kind of pick up this thread in Discord and chat about it. But I'd love to. I think it'd make a really nice write up. We could write another mirror post about it as well, and could be kind of a good example for folks of how drips can be used.
Nice. Cool. So if there's no more questions, I'm actually going to hand it over to Bordumb to give us a little update on the grants project or team.
Can everyone hear me? All right, cool. Hi everyone. Long time no talk. Hope everyone's doing well. So just to dive right into what some of you were just mentioning, in terms of dog fooding drips, I kind of see it as a few different tiers or like things to start doing. So one idea, so if we start like at a really high level, if we think about like what is the grants program, it's essentially people who hold RAD tokens have voted and said, we approve this, $1 million budget and we approve these people to work on it, right? So that's kind of like the top of the funnel, so to speak, of the money going down and the decision making. Then like the tier beneath that is kind of where I see like the first part where drips can play a part, whereby what we could do is we could, for example, one way to use it is to say, hey, anyone working on or managing drips could just get paid in drips. So that's one thing, is just sort of like paying people who work on the grants program in general. The other thing that we're interested in doing is paying out to dependencies. And so on one hand, this is doing like a monthly drips to protocols that help with governance. So for example, like some ideas we have are like Compound, Sybil, and a few others. And that is something I would rather wait to do once we have support for other ERC20 tokens, because most of our budget is in USDC, not DAI. So if that's coming soon, then we might just wait to do that. But anyways, that's sort of the idea, is that we would just pay out dependencies basically as a thank you note to say like, thanks for helping with this, like helping to empower anyone who's running a grants program to make decisions and govern themselves. The other idea also which is related to that sort of concept of this funnel or this flow of funds and decision making, is actually creating a community for grants, which would then have its own NFT, and people could, if they want to, buy the NFT, and then we could allocate some part of the budget to community-based decisions. So the idea there is you could say, okay, yeah, in general, these 6 people on the grants committee have been kind of given like carte blanche, like decision making to do what they will with the budget. We could also allocate and say, hey, we're going to allocate 20% of the budget to anyone who wants to buy the NFT. And in essence, you then could have community-based product decisions. So that's another idea. And that's something that we could do immediately without having to wait around for other ERC20 tokens. So we could just set up a community, and the only thing I'm waiting on here is just to get one more address from one of the protocols to properly drip to. And once we have that, like I'll set it up within, it only takes a few minutes. So those are kind of like the 3 things I'm thinking about dog fooding with the grants, is paying people who are participating with grants, then paying to dependencies, creating community, and I'm not entirely sure if we would. I think I would be on a case-by-case basis whether or not we would drip to actual grantees, and the reason there is that a lot of times it has to do with like sort of like one-off and very short-term deliverables that might not even last a month. So I'm not entirely sure how that, like whether that makes sense or not. But those are like the 3 that I definitely see, and this one on the side that is kind of like a maybe still. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions? I'll take that as a no. The other thing I wanted to bring up was I was talking with Abby about kind of how we can start picking things off from your plate for various reasons. It can be stuff like like Windows support, which I'm assuming is just something that we don't have domain expertise on. Or it could be something that is not sexy and you think is boring and you don't want to do. That whole spectrum of work. I'm going to start creating a Google Doc and share it with you to just kind of like collect some notes on things that could become RFPs, so that we could kind of like attack some larger things, things of the size of like having feature parity on Windows, for example. So I'll probably be sending that out in the next day or 2, and hopefully we can like work together on just sort of hashing out some light details. Like it doesn't need to be a lot of details, because the main people doing the work would be anyone who wants to work on it. So the grantees would actually kind of write up the proposal based on the general idea of some feature or product that we want to build out. Anyone have any questions about that?
So if I understand correctly, you mean that this would be grants that we put out there for people to pick up on, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what I've seen like other projects do is we could go into excruciating detail about what exactly we want. And then even budget like, hey, we want this feature built and we think it's going to take X amount of time and this many people. So we could go into those details and actually budget it out with a dollar amount, or we can also just come up with sort of vague statements that might say like, generally we want this thing built and we're just looking for someone else to do the work of proposing exactly how they would go about doing it and what budget they need. So I'm fine to kind of like work within that spectrum of like excruciating detail to sort of like a bit nebulous, because some things might just maybe you don't have time to actually go through that much detail and you'd rather just pay someone to do that. So that whole spectrum of it, would be covered.
Great.
Yeah.
So if there's no more questions, I would hand it over. I think marketing's not here today, so I think we're going to hand it over to community. I think that's going to be you, Shelby, right?
I
Oh,
actually
no.
only have governance updates.
Right. So actually, sorry, I'm reading the. So since IB6, she's going to write a little written update on the community progress, and Shelby's going to give us an update on the governance happenings. Is what she wrote, but I don't know what that means.
Yes. Okay. So I'll make it quick because we only have a few minutes left. But yeah, essentially the biggest items on the list were getting the two proposals, one for removing the name registration fee and the other for pushing forward with the Radicle Ecosystem Growth Fund passed in the formal review stage. Both snapshot polls reached the required 4% threshold, which was great, and they all both passed with all in favor votes, which was really cool to see. Those will be moving forward probably most likely next week. Hopefully Abby's feeling better. To go into the final stage of the governance process, including an on-chain vote for both of them. Yeah, so keep an eye out for those. As I mentioned, the thresholds were reached for both of the proposals, but Abby and I are still kind of really pushing for trying to activate more token holders, and we're doing a bit of stakeholder mapping and outreach to see where we can either encourage participation or delegation. And yeah, that's going into the delegation, as most of you probably already know, based on all of the posts and the tweets that we've been sending out. We have the new delegation announcement process, or active delegate announcement process and platform launched, which is pretty cool. We've had a few key community members announce themselves as active delegates, and yeah, got to post on the last proposals, and we'll have folks reaching out or like delegating to them to represent them for upcoming proposals, which is cool to see. And yeah, I think those were kind of the main items. Again, just trying to keep it short here. Also, just wanted to mention to find call notes and everything, you can always find them here. One moment. Every week there, it's brief call notes, so it's not every single word, but it's like a good summary with all of the links that were shared also. And also the recording we post on YouTube, which I also link within these notes as well, every month. So that is where you can find those. And yeah, I guess Julian, that was all from my side. I don't know if we want to briefly mention the Berlin powwow in March.
Yeah, go ahead. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in charge of planning this. I think it is definitely Eli's idea. But based on our Discord discussions the last week, it kind of sounds like we're planning a St. Patrick's Day, a radical St. Patrick's Day party in Berlin. Yeah, so I think it will just be kind of a dinner and hangout kind of session. But yeah, anybody who's in Berlin or who wants to travel to Berlin and wants to do a little co-working with moi and anyone else, would be really cool to see some folks. Perfect. Yeah, FinTam, every St. Patrick's Day party needs one of those. But yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I guess I should still probably I don't know, ask, or I don't know how we want to organize or confirm how many people are actually coming and all of that. The good old logistics, but we'll get that figured out here soon. We still have some time, but yes, I guess
nice.
that was it. And then people were talking about ETH Amsterdam. I can't remember who asked it in the Discord, if we were like doing both. I think it was, as Abby mentioned, the Berlin dinner would be a more casual, like meet up anybody who's here who wants to join, super, super welcome. And then ETH Amsterdam, I think, will be kind of a separate thing. But yeah.
Yeah, so
something to say about that.
Some of us were talking with like at ETH Denver, and I think it'll be tough for people like in the US to make it over or farther away to make it for like the St. Patty's Day thing, just because it's a shorter thing. But we were thinking like ETH Amsterdam might be a good way for getting people together that would be coming from farther away.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real life things. Imagine what a world.
I know, it's crazy.
Jesus.
It was so
right.
NASA's pictures he was sharing, and I was like, oh my god, they're real. These people
meeting in person. Is that even allowed? All right. I think this is it. It's 5. We made it. We went through everyone, I hope, right? I didn't mess up, right? Cool. Well, thank you all for being here and for giving the updates. And we'll see you all in Discord later.